I stood there, trembling. My palms were soaked with sweat, and my throat felt like it had been scraped with sandpaper. I hadn't even done anything wrong, not really, but try telling that to a courtroom that had already made up its mind. The judge, a stern woman in her mid-60s with iron-gray hair twisted into a bun, leaned forward from her bench. Her nameplate read Honorable Meredith Sloan, and her reputation was one of swift, cold decisions. "You expect me to believe that story," she said, chuckling without a hint of warmth. "You think tears will change the facts, Mr. Carter?" I swallowed hard. "I'm not asking for pity, Your Honor. Just a chance to explain what really happened." She raised a hand, stopping me. "Save it. This courtroom isn't a stage for dramatics." Laughter rippled from a few seats behind me. My face burned. I looked at the public defender next to me. He just stared forward, silent. My supposed advocate hadn't said a word in my defense since we walked in. My knees buckled slightly, but I stayed upright. I had to. I couldn't fall apart here. And then, boom. The heavy wooden courtroom doors slammed open with a suddenness that made the entire room freeze. The judge's gavel halted midair. Heads turned. Murmurs surged through the benches like a gust of wind. Two figures stepped into the room. And that's when everything began to change. The first figure was a tall man in a dark blue suit, sharp as a razor. His presence alone seemed to draw every eye in the courtroom: broad shoulders, polished shoes, and the kind of calm that only comes from authority. His hair was silver at the temples, his posture military straight. The second figure walked just behind him, a woman in her 40s, carrying a black briefcase and wearing a federal badge clipped to her belt. She scanned the courtroom with narrowed eyes before leaning in to speak to the man in the lead. Judge Sloan stood, visibly irritated. "Excuse me, this is a closed session." "Who are you?" And the man didn't stop walking. He moved with quiet command toward the front of the room. "You'll want to sit down, Judge." A collective gasp swept the courtroom. Even the bailiff took a half-step back. "I beg your pardon." Sloane's voice cracked with disbelief. He reached into his jacket and calmly produced a leather wallet, flipping it open. The golden seal inside shimmered. "Deputy Director Nathan Rourke, Office of the Inspector General." The judge went pale. "And this is Agent Lena Thomas," he said, motioning to the woman beside him. "We're here regarding Mr. Carter's case." Every beat of my heart sounded like a drum in my ears. My legs nearly gave out. Rourke turned to me and gave a slight nod. "Mr. Carter, I apologize for the delay." The courtroom was dead silent. The judge slowly sat back down, but her hands trembled slightly. I don't understand. What is this about?" Agent Thomas stepped forward, voice sharp and controlled. "We have documentation that this man was wrongly accused and that a key witness statement was deliberately suppressed. This hearing is over. He's coming with us." A shiver passed through the room like a ripple of electricity. And for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The tension in the room was suffocating. You could hear the air conditioning humming above the stunned silence. Judge Sloane's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her eyes darted to the bailiff, then to the courtroom clerk, searching for some kind of anchor in a moment that had spiraled out of her control. Agent Thomas handed the clerk a sealed envelope. "This is a federal injunction," she said. "Effective immediately, this court has no further jurisdiction over Mr. Carter." My head swam. I'd never even heard of anything like this happening in real life, only in movies. Rourke turned to the bailiff. "Stand down. If you interfere, you'll be part of the investigation too." The bailiff froze mid-step and slowly backed away. I could feel every eye on me now, some wide with curiosity, others trying to piece together what was happening. But all I could focus on was that badge, and the calm, steady way Rourke looked at me. Judge Sloan finally spoke, her voice lower but still laced with edge. "You can't just walk in here and I just did, Rourke replied. And if you'd like to challenge it, I suggest you consult your legal counsel. Because your name appears on page 3 of the complaint. Her face drained of color. You're under review for repeated dismissal of critical evidence and patterns of courtroom misconduct, Agent Thomas added. And Mr. Carter? He's not just a man who got railroaded. He's the reason this entire process is about to be exposed. It felt like the walls themselves were listening now. I looked up at the judge, this woman who had mocked me minutes ago, and watched her blink in stunned silence. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel small. Gasps and murmurs broke the silence like shattering glass. Some in the audience whispered my name, now suddenly curious. Others just stared, as if trying to make sense of how a tearful man with no voice had just become the epicenter of something far bigger. Rourke motioned for me to follow. I hesitated, then stood slowly, my knees still shaking. As I walked down the aisle, eyes followed every step like I was no longer a defendant, but a witness to something dangerous and rare. Before I reached the courtroom doors, Judge Sloan leaned forward and hissed, "You think this makes you a hero?" I paused. I turned toward her, steady now. "No, Your Honor," I said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "It just proves I was never the fool you thought I was." A hush swept through the benches like a cold wind. Sloan clenched her jaw, but didn't reply. She couldn't. Agent Thomas held the door for me as I stepped into the corridor, blinking against the sudden brightness of the hallway lights. "That was bold," she said, glancing at me sideways. "But you've earned that moment." I looked at her, still unsure of what all this meant. "What happens now?" Rourke joined us, adjusting the cuffs of his jacket. Now we show you everything they never wanted you to see. And you help us bring them down." Behind us, the doors to that courtroom slowly closed, on the past, on the shame, on the silence. Ahead, the hallway stretched long and unfamiliar. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a path. The federal SUV pulled up outside a low-rise building with no signage, just tinted windows and a single door with a keypad. It didn't look like justice lived there. It looked like the kind of place where secrets were buried. Inside, the air was cool and sterile. No chatter. No clutter. Just tight hallways, LED lights, and quiet determination. "This way," Agent Thomas said, leading me through a series of secure doors. Rourke walked just behind, silent but watchful. Finally, we stepped into a large room filled with locked cabinets, servers humming quietly against the back wall. A man in a white shirt and ID badge nodded as we entered and handed Agent Thomas a slim folder. "This is your case file," she said, placing it on the table. "The full, unredacted version." I opened it with shaking hands. The first page alone made my stomach tighten, a statement I'd never seen. From someone who had actually witnessed what happened the night I was arrested. A statement that never made it to the judge. I flipped through pages, emails, interview transcripts, suppressed surveillance footage stills. "This," I whispered. "This clears me." Rourke nodded. It always did. But some people were more invested in burying the truth than finding it. Agent Thomas leaned in. "We need your help now. Not just to clear your name, but to take down everyone who let this happen. The clerk who filed false reports. The officers who misled the court. And yes, Judge Sloan." A chill ran through me. "You're not just walking away free," she added. "You're becoming a witness. Maybe the most important one." I closed the folder, slower this time. My name, Carter, Elijah, was printed clean at the top. I looked at both of them and finally asked, "Where do we start?" Rourke smiled for the first time. "With your voice. And the truth." Over the next few days, I learned things I wasn't ready for. Rourke and Agent Thomas set me up in a secure hotel suite under federal protection. They gave me a burner phone, a direct line to their team, and instructions not to talk to anyone, not friends, not family, no one. I thought I was the only one who'd been targeted. I was wrong. In a quiet conference room downtown, I sat across from a wall-sized digital screen as Agent Thomas tapped through folders labeled with case numbers, dozens of them. All of these people were sent through Sloane's courtroom, she explained. Many were denied fair counsel, had evidence suppressed, or faced unusually harsh sentences. And there's a pattern. She clicked again, up came a spreadsheet of names, dates, financial transactions. Sloane has been working with a private corrections contractor. The more people she convicts, the more that company profits from extended sentences in their facilities. There's kickback money, backdoor meetings, falsified reports. Your case is just one of many, except you stood up. I sat back, stunned. This is a machine. A very profitable one, Rourke said quietly from the corner. I gritted my teeth. My pain, my public humiliation, was part of a business model. Thomas handed me a new folder. Inside was a subpoena. You'll testify before the Oversight Committee. But first, we're prepping you for the media. When this breaks, it's going national. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about exposing a system. And I wasn't backing down. 3 days later, I sat in a high-rise office with cameras pointed straight at me. A producer clipped a mic to my collar while a journalist from a major network flipped through her notes. She smiled politely, but I could see the fire in her eyes. She knew this story was going to explode. You ready? She asked. I nodded. My palms were sweating again, just like in that courtroom. But this time, the trembling was different. It wasn't fear. It was purpose. The red light blinked on. This is Maya Ellison with National Network News, and tonight, an exclusive interview with Elijah Carter, the man at the center of a federal investigation into courtroom misconduct, suppression of evidence, and a judicial scandal with national consequences. The questions came fast. What happened in that courtroom? What did the judge say? How did you feel when the federal agents walked in? But the most important one was, why speak out now? I took a breath, steady and deliberate. Because I know I'm not the only one. Because someone has to say something first. And because silence is exactly what they've been counting on. The broadcast aired that night. And the country erupted. Social media lit up. Hashtag Elijah Carter trended within the hour. Video clips were shared across platforms. People started coming forward, former defendants, public defenders, even a retired court clerk. And behind it all, Judge Sloane's name kept surfacing. By the next morning, a formal investigation into her entire judicial history was announced on live television. But I wasn't watching. I was getting ready for the Capitol. Because the next step wasn't just TV. It was Congress. The hearing chamber was packed. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters scribbled notes, and murmurs filled the marble hall as I stepped up to the microphone. Behind me sat Agent Thomas and Deputy Director Rourke. In front of me, congressional oversight members, expressionless and silent, watching every move I made. A nameplate in front of me read, Mr. Elijah Carter, witness. I cleared my throat. Good morning. My name is Elijah Carter. I'm here today not just on behalf of myself, but for everyone who never got the chance to sit in this chair. A hush fell over the room. I told them everything. From the moment I walked into Judge Sloane's courtroom, to the mockery, the silencing, the sealed evidence, the lies. I recounted the humiliation, the hopelessness, the moment the courtroom doors opened, and how everything changed. I laid out the names. The documents. The payoffs. The patterns. Every time I paused, it wasn't because I was nervous. It was because the weight of truth needs air to land. Some of the committee members shifted in their seats. A few looked visibly uncomfortable. Others nodded, quietly taking notes. When I finished, I added one final line. Justice isn't something you receive. It's something you demand. And today, I'm here to demand it, for all of us. The silence afterward was deafening. And then, slowly, one by one, they began to applaud. It wasn't just a win. It was the beginning of a reckoning. 2 months later, Judge Sloan was officially removed from the bench. Federal charges followed: abuse of power, obstruction, conspiracy. Several others connected to the scheme, clerks, contractors, even officers, were named in the indictments. The machine had finally cracked open. I watched it unfold from a different place than where I started. Not the courtroom. Not the witness stand. But the front row of a town hall meeting, this time as a guest speaker. People now asked for my insight. Law schools invited me to speak on reform. Non-profits reached out to collaborate. I wasn't a symbol of pity anymore. I was a voice they had to listen to. After the meeting ended, a young man approached me, early 20s, nervous eyes, trembling hands. I saw your story, he said. What they did to you. They almost did the same to me. I put a hand on his shoulder. Then let's make sure they never do it again. Because justice doesn't end with one person. It starts there. And I was just getting started.